What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be about the Champions League matchup between PSG and Manchester City. PSG ended up winning the match 2-0 in Paris against Manchester City. And before we start, check out both my books. As you see, the covers are right here. Insight and Rotations, there's links in the description below. Also, check out Keyframe. It's how I make these match analysis videos. So let's get right into it. PSG, in their initial build-up, they looked to build from the back to exploit the space of Manchester City's high block and in transition. Those were their most dangerous moments, and Manchester City countered this with a 4-3-3 with two holding midfielders, so a midfield three, or we can call it a 4-2-3-1 with two holding midfielders blocking off the advanced midfielders of PSG, and with their 4-2-3-1 with the advancing fullback of Kyle Walker to hold the wide area and create man orientation around the press and create numerical equality around the ball. So this allowed Manchester City to close off the outlets of PSG and limited their ability to create a numerical advantage and then create a qualitative advantage further forward using a free man. PSG built from the back with their two central defenders and their lone pivot. So now in their midfield three, they played with one holding midfielder and two box-to-box midfielders playing as number eights. The wide areas were held by their fullbacks with the variability of Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe looking to invert and play in between the lines. So as we see here, Messi, the number 10, Messi wearing the number 30, plays in a free roam role, getting in space between the lines, where Neymar is more bound by the left-hand side with the propensity to invert. So now very clearly we can see the exact structure of PSG with their back four and wide fullbacks, and now their three-man triangular midfield with their two advanced players and their single pivot. So this lined up against Manchester City's 4-2-3-1 very well and allowed Manchester City to have close access to the midfielders of PSG. So this is why the transitions and playing against the high block of Manchester City were so important for PSG, because this is when more space was created and qualitative superiority was established, especially in transition. And as we see, the off-centered front three of PSG with very fluid squad roles and being able to invert or stay in the wide areas, get the ball in the situations that they determine. Manchester City countered this with their back four, creating a +1 numerical superiority at the back and deeper areas, with their fullbacks orienting very closely to Neymar and Messi, oftentimes jumping, which could then exploit space in behind by Mbappe. But now we see the 4-2-3-1 in a deeper area, with now Kyle Walker not jumping unless they're pressing in the high block, as we saw in the last picture. And Kevin De Bruyne played as the number 10 for Manchester City, with Sterling as the 9. So now we see our front three stepping further forward for Manchester City, and this is how we can determine PSG exploiting the space in the wide area. So the free players are the fullbacks in this setup against the Manchester City 4-2-3-1, with now João Cancelo being the jumping fullback, but now Kyle Walker is pinned deeper with the Neymar positioning and now creates space for the fullback. And this is why PSG became so dangerous in this situation, is because of instances like this, where there's a lot of space in the wide areas to progress through, for then Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi to then receive the ball in 1v1 situations or with space to move into higher up the field. So now we can look at the positioning of the fullbacks, orienting themselves to the PSG fullbacks. Manchester City fullbacks are jumping in their pressing system to then try and win the ball and recover possession higher up the field. And this allows the Manchester City wingers to narrow and press from out to in, looking to force PSG to play through their midfield, where there's tight man orientation and 3v3 situations against the PSG front line. But the downside of this is it creates the free player via Messi dropping into the 10 area and then creating this false 9 rondo situation in their diamond midfield setup. So PSG were able to create numerical advantages with space around Messi when both fullbacks did jump for Manchester City. In the midfield third, Manchester City looked to play in a more of a 4-3-3 in their mid block, which looked to stagger the space between the lines and try and limit the access that the front three of PSG had in these dangerous areas. So by playing a 4-3-3, there was natural staggering, which created high levels of spatial control in these advanced positions. So it often saw Messi and Neymar fade into the wide areas to try and find the ball. And here we see Verratti dropping between the central defenders to try and pull out the Manchester City front three and then create space around the two box-to-box midfielders for PSG. Now Manchester City in possession. They also played in a 4-3-3 in possession of the ball, but this time the key difference is the fullbacks for Manchester City played much more narrow, and the full width was created by the wingers of Manchester City. This gave Manchester City a little bit more variability in their movements in the wide area, using the flexibility of their midfielders to use positional interchanges in the wide area. So as we can see, we have three-man wide structures, very symmetrical starting situations with these players, as we see here. So with the three-man wide structure, they're often able to create 3 versus 2 in wide areas or exploit the space in behind using underlapping runs from the fullback or interior midfielder. On the reverse side, they can also create rondo situations in 4 versus 2s in their build-up phase via an advancing central defender, which was often Laporte in this game, using his left foot in the left half space. But as we see, we have either a 4v2 situation on this right-hand side, or we can exploit the three-man wide structure on the left-hand side. So these varying concepts make them very difficult to play against, but PSG countered this well, often defending in deeper areas, playing with their back four, a three-man midfield with two more advanced players and Verratti as the single pivot, and then with their front three, limiting their roles in their defensive phase, but they come alive in transition, and this is when PSG look most dangerous. So as we clearly see, the 4-3-3 of PSG looked to control central areas, which Manchester City looked to exploit through their narrow fullbacks, with Kyle Walker creating tight connections with his central defenders, and the midfield of Manchester City played very narrow, trying to release the wide areas and create progression in these wide areas to exploit the space. And as the game progressed, they looked to then create a diamond midfield with Sterling dropping deeper between the lines and creating an overload in the midfield. So this created a diamond in the midfield with a base of the Rodri as their holding midfielder, and this looked to create stronger passing angles between the lines into Manchester City's more advanced players and looking to establish these passing connections between the PSG three-man midfield. And in the second half of the game, we saw the Manchester City central defenders become more aggressive, especially Laporte, advancing the ball via dribbling in the left half space. And what this did to the midfield, it positioned Rodri quite higher in the central corridor and made the connections in the midfield much tighter. So this benefited the wingers, allowing them to have more space in the wide areas because of the narrow structure of the Manchester City players. But what this did was it created more space for the transition of PSG to exploit 1v1 situations and exploit their qualitative advantage with the PSG front three. And playing in their low block, PSG played a 4-5-1 with loose defensive roles for players like Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe. So it was often just a 4-3-3, but Messi and Neymar did drop on the wings, trying to create a 4-5-1 at times. But again, the main priority for the front three of PSG were the phases of transition when PSG would win the ball. And we can see with Laporte advancing the ball with his left foot in the half space, Manchester City looked to undo the compactness of PSG by dragging a player out, but this kind of worked against them in the match and left them a little exposed in transition, which they didn't get hurt on very often, but with players like Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe, it only takes one transition for them to convert a chance. So in the end, as much as Manchester City controlled the game, PSG just had too much for them in transition and ended up winning the match 2-0. And that's going to wrap up the analysis today, and I'll see you in the next one.